Hi, I'm Heather Smith and welcome to the Accounting Apps Podcast, exploring the accounting and business apps community. Stay up to date with the curated content I'm sharing by signing up for the Accounting Apps newsletter, available at accountingapps.io, and joining the Accounting Apps Mastermind group. In this episode, Michael Wood, founder and CEO of Translucent, joined me. We discussed the company's recent launch event. I strategically partner with the team at Translucent, and it's always a pleasure to talk with Michael, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Hello, Michael. Welcome back to the podcast. How's your week been so far?
It's been an interesting week, Heather. A little loaded question to begin with. So a week ago, obviously, had the first launch event for Translucent, which was a big deal. And then yesterday it was leaked, and then today it was announced that my previous business I founded, Dext, was sold. So I can definitely say there's been quite a lot going on in the past week.
Very exciting just before the festive period, I guess, because we kind of, here in Australia, we kind of take a big, long relax in leading into the festive period, but not in Michael Wood's world, hey?
Well, actually, so it's quite funny. In the VC world and the private equity world, Christmas is a big line in the sand of people trying to get deals done. So it's you often get deals announced about now, because there's always a feeling that deals are related to momentum. And so what you don't want is to be, halfway through a deal, on the 20th of December and trying to pick it up again on whatever it is, the 4th of Jan. A lot of people try to get deals closed. For us doing the launch event, it wasn't, we are going to do these launch events every quarter. Our aim at Translucent, as we've always been quite public about, is we think there's a lot of problems to solve and we want to launch a new app every quarter. And this was us beginning to do that in a more public way, whereas previously, as a younger, more juvenile company, we were still sort of learning how to do it and, being a bit softer in the launches. Whereas now we've got that little bit more maturity, still very young, probably in primary school rather than preschool now. But yeah, so that was the thinking of, we wanted to get onto this quarterly schedule of launching a new app every quarter.
Absolutely. And was the first one. You are releasing a lot of innovation out of the solution. And I will, here in Australia, we actually don't go back to work until the 27th of January. So we really don't have a good festive relax. But I guess it's our summer as opposed to...
So South Africans are the same, by the way. South Africans are the same. They take the same long Christmas, summer.
Wonderful, wonderful. So for people listening in, Michael Wood, you are the CEO and founder of Translucent, and Translucent describes itself as the CFO super app for multi-entity finance teams. And as we'd expect, Translucent is very focused on supporting multi-entity businesses in improving data accuracy and reliability. Now, with that, you've highlighted two problems. The first is quite obvious, okay? And it's around data accuracy, garbage in, garbage out. We need the data going in to be accurate for it to surface any accurate data. And I think a lot of anyone listening in would be quite across that. But the second problem is a little less understood. And that is that in many groupings of businesses, they have a data model problem. So can you explain to our audience the concept of this data model for our audience?
Sure. So obviously, every accountant, bookkeeper, member of a finance team watching, listening is dealing with a set of books. And as soon as you're dealing with a set of books, you're actually dealing with a particular data model. And the data model is most simply described as that set of data on which you're working on for that business. And of course, it changes business by business. Now, sometimes it can change in really obvious ways, as, business A has this chart of accounts and business B has this chart of accounts. But of course, it then also differs in slightly more subtle ways. For example, this business may be cash-based and this business may be accrual-based, or this business may not do forecasting and this business also involves a set of forecast data. So it really is, the data model is just that set of data that you as the finance team or you as the accountancy firm or you as the bookkeeper is working on for that business. Now, where it then gets more complex beyond that sort of pretty obvious or more sort of simple examples is, of course, more and more finance teams are both recognizing and being able to deal with a wider set of data.
Mm.
And whether that's taking in data from the CRM, whether that's taking in the data from the payroll to provide sort of KPIs per headcount, whether it's data from an e-commerce platform, an inventory platform, et cetera, et cetera. That was something I wouldn't call it sort of uncommon 5-10 years ago, but it was obviously much harder to do 5-10 years ago, whereas now it's easier. So you definitely see the data model that a finance team is working on expanding in those ways to sort of maybe sort of, if I can call them non-core financial metrics. And then also, as you mentioned, in multi-entity businesses, the data model problem is magnified because you've got the data from multiple entities. So what we realized, and I started Translucent 2.5 years ago. We started sort of onboarding clients about a year, 18 months ago. And what just became really obvious to us as we were building Translucent was, as much as we were adding new features and functions, a lot of users and a lot of clients have issues with their data model. And the issues really can be described as two types. One is, as you say, rubbish in, rubbish out. So one is there is some rubbish getting in. And it's like, how do we help those businesses just get visibility of where that rubbish is? Is it one particular entity that's leaking it in, or is it one process, or is it one individual? Where is the leak, if we can call it that? And then the second thing is actually just structuring the data model, structuring the data in a better way so that you can do what you want with it much more easily.
And why do you think that this is occurring? Is this because we have access to more data? Is it dispersed teams that aren't communicating with one another? Is it evolution? Is it something else?
So the first thing I'd say is obviously the concept of a data model is not unique to accounting and bookkeeping. You have a data model in security, you have a data model in if you're in a sort of pricing team for Coles or Woolies, a data model is just that set of data you're working with. And everyone in every area, as soon as you're working on a set of data, you can have data model issues. So first, I wouldn't want to sort of highlight our industry as sort of being particularly problematic around that. Data is, by its very nature, as you say, various sort of routes in, various routes out, various people working on it, various systems working on it. There's lots of possibilities outside of what we're talking about that can cause data model issues. I think it's a really good question, Heather, of for accounting and bookkeeping. If I answer the easiest one first, which is the multi-entity one, and then if I sort of more generalize, in multi-entity, I think yes, you're right. The issue is quite often it's different people working on different parts of the data. So, for example, you definitely see sort of different entities. And here's a classic one. We obviously provide our intercompany tool to allow you to sort of automate the balancing of the intercompany accounts. Why is that so useful? Because you often see it's one team working on one entity and another team working on another entity, and both teams think they're doing a good job, but actually there can be the smallest discrepancy in the way they work can create a significant intercompany issue if they don't have visibility of both sides of the data. But it's not just, when I say different teams, it might be people that set up the data versus people that use the data. So we'll probably talk later about tracking categories, but this is one we've definitely seen happen is, it's one person that's maybe set up the tracking categories for different entities, but then it's different teams that are then using the tracking categories in different entities. And so over time, there's been this slow drift of one team think you categorize to tracking categories this way, and another team's doing it another way. So there's lots of different reasons with that sort of there's lots of reasons with multi-entity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting to sort of keep on top of it. And sort of with a solution like Translucent, hopefully we are moving towards that accuracy within the model. So late November 24, you hosted a launch event where you talked about recent feature releases, recent innovations, and you also unveiled three new tools within the Translucent range. So I'm keen to methodically work through all of those tools. However, before I do, I'd like to know two things. Firstly, sort of the big news that did come out is you've made Translucent free for accounting and bookkeeping firms. Why did you decide to do that?
It's something obviously Zero did right back in the day, sort of early days. And it was just something that felt made sense to us. We wanted the community to get the benefit of the new software. And we wanted the community to be able to be familiar with our software, with zero cost, zero upfront, zero worries, zero commitments, etc. So it was something at the Zero playbook, and it's something that just it felt very easy to do, and glad to be able to help all those multi-entity bookkeeping and accountancy firms solve these problems for free.
Absolutely. It's always easier to try a solution when it's free, isn't it? And I'm keen to go through, as I said, the various tools in detail. But just before we do that, feedback have you received from the launch event?
It's been really interesting. Translucent's new. Translucent's still very new. As I say, I started the business 2.5 years ago. We started onboarding clients a year ago. We started being sort of truly valuable sort of Q1, Q2 this year. And what the launch event really seems to have precipitated is just that outpouring of affection for what we've built. And it's just been lovely. The number of sort of unprompted messages on LinkedIn, people popping up in forums, etc., appreciating what we've built. And we're very much still a team whose heads are down. I know some of you might have met us at the odd roadshow and things, but we really haven't built a sales and marketing machine yet. We've been just completely focused on building. So it's a little bit like we've been in a bunker for 2 years, just frantically building, frantically building, frantically building, and we're sort of emerging, blinking into the sunlight. And the launch event was the beginning of that. And so to get so many messages of people appreciating not just what was announced this week, but also things they've been using for 6 months, 12 months, etc. And as I say, we're not a sales and marketing organization yet. We haven't recruited those people. We haven't developed those muscles. We'll do that over the next year. So we haven't been out there, collecting reviews, doing all those things that a business often does, because we've just been so focused on building. So it was lovely to get that feedback. Really humanly nice when you've been, as I say, in a bunker for 2 years, and it's like, I think this is being appreciated. I can see more and more and more people using it every day. But to get those, as I say, sort of unprompted messages of, oh, you've never met me, but I use this, and it was really nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. The accounting and bookkeeping world I find is very, very, very quiet. And it's just a few people who surface constantly. So it is nice that they engaged with the launch event and that they did reach out to you. And that's one of the reasons I go to conferences is people actually come up and talk to you. You got no idea who they are, but but they have been monitoring and watching what's happening, and they're keen to have a conversation. And you've always been very front facing with the community, which is wonderful that they're communicating with you. But let me get on. Let's talk about some of the features and functionalities that you've released. These are already out. These people can go and touch them right now. That you've released over the last 6 months and what they mean for accountants and bookkeepers in practice. So let's start with the 445 reporting in consolidation. So it means that you can see consistent 13-week quarters across the periods. Any comments on that? I know that that's something that some people really ask for, that 445 reporting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The first thing for everyone to just let you know is I'm not a trained accountant. So for some of these answers, I could absolutely trip myself up and embarrass myself quite massively. So, but no, so what Translucent is a series of different apps, all focused at multi-entity businesses. And in our consolidation app, from hospitality businesses mainly, we were being asked again and again for two things. It was weekly reporting of the consolidated P&L and other reports, because previously we just had monthly, quarterly, annually. So they wanted to be able to compare week by week, and as you say, they wanted 445. So it definitely isn't something for everyone, but for those hospo businesses, it's basically a deal breaker. If you can't do their reporting period, a consolidation tool is no good.
Yeah.
So we were delighted to ship that and be able to help those businesses.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware that hospitality were focused on that sort of reporting. So I'm learning something.
I
Next,
think, Heather, again, this is where I could trip myself up. I think it is because they have the issues of, monthly can be problematic for them, because the last week of the month can be busier and all those kind of things. Yeah, but again, I don't want to go too deep into it because I'll embarrass myself.
months can be so strange. Some get 5 weekends and some don't, and that
Yes,
would
sorry.
really
Yes, you're exactly right. That's what it is. That's what it is. Yes, yes. All right. You are right. I am wrong. My explanation was incorrect. Yes.
no, yes, absolutely. So, custom KPIs in group reporting. So, in addition to all of the normal metrics, you're offering the flexibility of custom KPIs in the financial analysis.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go in this. So obviously in our consolidation tool, producing the P&L, the balance sheet, trial balance, everything you'd expect. But back to the point of the data model, of course, more and more businesses, in their board pack reporting, etc., want very specific KPIs. And we've got a really exciting roadmap around all this. But this was just the beginning to allow people to be able to sort of do formulas of, reports, EBITDA percentages or whatever it might be they might wish from the numbers in the P&L. So a lot to come from us in 25 on this, but this was good to get the beginning and be able to help some of the more basic queries.
Yeah, absolutely. And people do like to be able to go in and customize things. So that is a good, and
They
at least
really, really do. They really do. That's one thing that's been interesting building Translucent is just how much people are attached to, a particular format of a report. And we've if you'd have asked me a year, 18 months ago when we first sort of set out on building consolidation, that would have been the thing. I think I definitely, I always, as many things I got wrong, but that would have been one of them, just the degree of customization that's required for as table stakes.
yeah, yes, absolutely. Now, this is a really exciting one, which is data dimensions. So you're providing 6 additional tracking categories, each with up to 250 options. And that kind of lets you cut and splice, detailed data segmentation, sort of beyond the limitations of typical general ledger software. So, for example, Xero, you have two tracking categories with 100 options in there. And if you push it beyond that, it really becomes cumbersome and difficult to manage. So you've really opened up the ability for people to uh, push some robust tracking categories in there. And you did cite, I saw a comment that said, the limited number of tracking categories is the number one reason people leave Xero to migrate to an ERP, which I was astonished that that would be the reason.
Yeah, so when I first was thinking of doing translucent as a business, I obviously interviewed a lot of CFOs, accountants about either who had already migrated and why they'd migrated, and also those that were, on the cusp and those that were sort of running larger businesses on Xero. And this is just, it came up again and again and again of this is the problem. Like, obviously, other issues can be cited. Like some people might talk about sort of sales invoice limits or volumes and things like that. There are other sort of issues that Xero are aware of that larger businesses can struggle with. Most of those had workarounds in the market, to be honest. Whereas this one is just a really big problem. And another way you can see how big a problem it is if you look at Intact or Acumatica or anyone else, their advertising and marketing at Xero clients, they make a really big thing of the number of data dimensions they have. They have it front and center of their marketing. I don't know how many each does, but they will be, we do 8 or we do 12 or whatever it is. And they know just how big a thing this is. And so we wanted any business, single entity or multi-entity, the multi-entity is obviously our core, to not need to leave Xero for this issue anymore. It was one we were able to solve. And so, we've added these 6 extra dimensions. So a business can keep using their existing tracking categories, as I say, whether single entity or multi-entity. And they've then got the ability to create 6 more within Translucent. And then you do then need to do the reporting in Translucent. We're not able to push the data back to Xero. So we can, there's ways we can get the data back into Xero, but there's not ways we can get the data back into Xero in a way it would then show up in Xero's reporting as per tracking categories.
Yes.
So
yes.
I absolutely acknowledge it has that limit. Some people might see that as a limitation, but we're really proud of any business, single entity or multi-entity, can now run more than 2 tracking categories and data dimensions with their Xero file.
So to clarify, the core focus is multi-entity. However, this feature, a single core general ledger could actually come and utilize this actual feature.
Exactly. And it was actually for them that we increased the number of options from 100 to 250, because we know there's quite a lot of single entity businesses out there that actually are happy with 2 tracking categories, but it's the 100 option limit they hit.
Yes.
And that took that up to 250, to be able to accommodate those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So next one to talk about is intercompany auto reconciliation. So automatically, when you've got multiple files, matching those intercompany transactions across the files automatically, and assisting with reducing discrepancies and streamlining your workflows, and giving you sort of better transparency over your data.
Yeah, so 99% of businesses with intercompany transactions today are probably running some form of an Excel matrix. You're nodding, everyone nods, everyone knows it. They have to upload the data into Excel or download data into Excel and create a manual matrix. So we've created that matrix in Translucent. So for both AP and AR accounts and your loan accounts. So if I talk about the manual version first, you can manually map your intercompany accounts. We then automatically produce the matrix. Then when you click through on any imbalance the matrix shows, you're able to then see the transactions behind it and do the reconciliation to identify where the problem lies. And then from within Translucent, post the balancing journal or invoice back into Xero. So that's the manual version. Fully exists today, you can do. But when I speak to clients and businesses, they are very keen for us just to fully automate this. So I automate the mapping of the accounts at the beginning, automate the reconciliation of the transactions behind the imbalance, and automate the posting back to the balancing transaction back to Xero. And so we've been working on different stages of the automation of that process. And we're still a few weeks away from fully automating all of it. But yes, we automate the reconciliation today. And we do some mapping of the automation of the intercompany mappings today as well. But we think it's very soon for those that want it. They'll be able to use Translucent, and we will automate the entire workflow, and they can choose to, let's say, get an email on a Friday lunchtime to say, look, once again, your intercompany accounts balance, but FYI, for that balancing to occur, we had to create this transaction in this Xero. Here it is. You can click and audit it. If you want to undo it or edit it, you can, but everything balances. So we think we can make that whole workflow automated. So we're excited to begin to automate the reconciliation as part of that.
I'm sure people will be relieved to have a solution to assist them, because it's not necessarily fun finding all those needle in a haystacks. And another one, which is a very sensible one, which is reordering columns in group reporting, which is just a simple one there, being able to reorder columns, which makes it more usable. So I'm not sure if you have a comment on that, but
no, just back to the customization everyone requires.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about the 3 new tools unveiled at the launch event. And I realize I talked about one already, so I've gone and stuffed up there. Sorry, but let's talk about those 3 tools. And if we can, I'll touch on them, and maybe you can elaborate more on them. So let's talk about and this one I was quite excited about, the tracking category audit tool. Okay, so the tracking category audit tool. So it enables users to synchronize and review all of their tracking categories in one place and identify inconsistencies, like if you've gone human resources and HR in one and human resources in the other, getting all the names correct, and ensure that they're happening across all entities. That looked like a really cool tool for checking things out. Do you have any comments on that one?
Yeah, again, it just what we talked about at the beginning of, just as we work with more and more clients and more people's and their data, this was just a problem that shouted out of, and there's 2 or 3 versions of the problem. There is the tracking categories have been set up incorrectly. So you absolutely see this of, in entity 1, it's called projects, and in entity 2, it's called project. Just like you get, sometimes they're egregious, the differences, and sometimes they're really small. Then within the naming of the options, as you said, in one entity it's called HR, and another one it's called human resources. Actually, the more subtle one than that is actually just the count of options. It's so common. You see across the entities, a tracking category is obviously meant to have, let's say, 30 options. And you see it's got 30 options, 30 options, 30 options. Oh, and in entity 4, it's got 29. And then it goes back to 30. And you see, oh God, someone in setting up has just missed one. They've obviously been doing a data entry task and they've just missed one.
Yeah.
And of course, again, really difficult to spot if you're just reviewing your data in a P&L format, because it's not showing up as, because it's very difficult to spot an absence, Yeah. You see these different kinds of problems. And then the third type of problem we were seeing a lot is again, back to different teams just working in different ways. So everything might be set up properly, but transactions in one entity are being coded to one tracking category, and the same transactions in another entity being coded to another tracking category. So the tracking category audit is the first of a number of audit tools we're going to launch. And they are just to shine a light on those parts of people's data that normally sit in the dark, or sit in sort of corners that are hard to examine or hard to see. We just want to bring them out into the light. Tracking category audit is a free tool. Anyone can use it, single entity, multi-entity. They can just plug in Translucent, get the audit. They don't need to buy anything else, and just get that visibility.
Yeah.
And as I say, we're going to be launching more tools like that, because our job is to help groups and multi-entity businesses make the most of their finances, and the data's got to be right, and no one else can do it, so it's us.
My bookkeeper spider senses like that tool would love going across and just making sure everything matches up and is accurate. And I'm sure a lot of the bookkeepers
It's really
love that.
interesting, Helen. It's really interesting when you do it. It's I didn't put a percentage on it when we announced it. The percentage that have no issues is very, very small. I didn't feel quite confident to put an exact percent. Is it 5% that have no problems, or is it 7%? But it's a small number that have zero issues.
And you want to make decisions on accurate data, and something just going in the wrong direction can just have a big implication that you just didn't realize. So one of the other things is in that's coming up is granular permissions. So allowing precise control over data access, and enabling restrictions by criteria such as tracking category or account code to ensure the appropriate data is visible in areas. Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
Yeah, yeah. This one's a few weeks away before it's in everyone's hands, but obviously, permissions and access is one of the areas of zero that people are most vocal about. That they'd like it to be more granular, they'd like it to be more specific, they'd like to be able to sort of set more detailed permissions. And whilst that problem, can apply to any size of business, it's almost more common at larger businesses and the multi-entity businesses. So it was really obvious one, again, for us. We were getting a lot of requests to do it, to be able to, for people to be able to create a super granular permission. So if you want someone to only see, I don't know, the Facebook ads transactions, you could just do that. Or if you wanted someone to only see one workflow in Translucent, like the treasury cash management, they can do that. Or whatever they want to do. It's all going to be options.
They're coming in through Translucent, and are they drilling down into QuickBooks or Xero or Penny Lane, or are they just staying in Translucent for that?
They are just looking at the transactions in Translucent. And always drill down into Translucent, and there is always the option to click back to the underlying accounting software. But of course, if they didn't have permission to the underlying accounting software, the click back wouldn't overwrite. Yeah, it would. Yeah.
That's definitely something that people ask for. And the other thing the other feature functionality that is coming out is the data dimensions, but I mentioned it earlier by mistake. So I don't believe
that is available now.
Oh, it is available. Okay, that was my mix up. You talked about three things in the launch, but that's correct. Am I correct? The data dimensions, tracking category, audit tool, and granular permissions and access. So many people are going to be so excited about that, because I'm sitting in the forums all the time, and these are things that they are asking for. They didn't even know they wanted that tracking category audit tool, and now they will. They didn't even know it was possible.
We've got a few more up our sleeve like that that we think are really exciting, that just people may not be shouting about it today, but we just think we think there's just a lot of ways we can help people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you're taking a lot of feedback directly from accountants and bookkeepers, which is shaping what that you're doing, but also you're actually in there and issues are surfacing, which may be triggering what you're doing. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it also comes from two things of one, um, Translucent is born from my experience of running a multi-entity business on zero. It was 8 entities. And so though that's a while ago, those sort of memories of the problems are fresh. And also at Translucent, we are a multi-entity business, and of course we're using Translucent. So we are sort of every day in there, understanding the issues of a multi-entity business, and experiencing it and trying to make it easier for people like us.
Oh, I'm getting the feedback from everywhere, the 360-degree feedback. That's fantastic. So how do you balance? Because there's a lot of features and functionalities and innovation come back. How are you balancing that with accountants understanding it and bookkeepers understanding it and sort of awareness in the community, I guess?
I don't think we've done a good job at that yet. So basically we think the software industry is undergoing some pretty radical changes right now. And it is possible, and we've shown it's possible to ship new features every week. So every week, if
Mm.
those that follow us, at least on LinkedIn, every week we will announce the new features we've shipped that week. They're not always big. They sometimes are quite big. They're sometimes really small, but we're shipping every week. Um, we know that as a user, whether you're an accounting bookkeeping firm or an internal finance team, that's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And that's why we've started doing these launch events to be,
Mm.
okay, every quarter we will recap what we've done and announce what's new in that quarter. And that way, if you're a customer or a potential customer, if you want to ignore us the other 12 weeks when we're making these announcements, you can feel free because you've got enough going on with your business. You don't need to listen to what we're doing with our business. But what
Yes.
we're trying to do is say, look, 4 times a year, if we could possibly have your attention for that half an hour, we can bring you up to speed on what's new, what's happened, what's coming, and therefore what's changed for being at the cutting edge of running a multi-entity company or group.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've done a good job at all yet in communicating what we do. As again, we're a super young business. Is our support center as good as it could be? No, it's not. Is our onboarding as good as it could be? No, it's not. Frankly, is our website as good as it could be? No, it's not. There's many, many things that we're still getting up the curve, but we will get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, um, the accounting and bookkeeping community like feature and functionality over fancy websites. I absolutely am sure of that.
100%.
And you are releasing it. It almost makes when you're working with other things, you're like going, oh, what? Why aren't they evolving the way that this is evolving? So it is quite exciting to see something evolve as fast as this. So kudos to the team that you have um, 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 uh, uh, collected and who are all working together to do this.
It's the team, Heather, but it's also a very specific way of building. You've got to build in different ways. It's like if you've got a team structured, sort of in a way sort of designed in 2015, it's just not going to happen. So if you look around the world, there's a handful of teams in sort of the touch accounting and finance that ship as fast as us. Ramp in New York would be the best example. Our American users will know them very well. Rippling begins to touch the finance space, mainly HR.
Mm-hmm.
But there is sort of a handful around the world that are building in specific ways that allow users to get the benefit of this really fast pace of development. But it is very, very rare. But you've got to build in that specific way, and then, as you say, hire the caliber of team to fulfill it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very exciting. Um, Is there anything more that you want to share on the long-term vision of Translucent's sort of role in the accounting industry for accountants and bookkeepers? Is there anything else that you want to touch on there, or do you feel you've kind of covered
I
it
think
off
it'd
well?
be a great opportunity to actually make a request. So, as we've talked about, every quarter we're going to do a launch event, and every quarter we're going to be announcing a new solution that's solving a different problem. And like this quarter, it may be more than one solution. That means every quarter we're looking again at our roadmap, and obviously things often take more than 3 months. They often take 6 months or 9 months to build. So we're planning the May release, we're planning the August release, etc. But to hear from your listeners, your followers, etc., of what do they think is a problem? If they're experiencing multi-entity businesses and working in multi-entity businesses, what do they think is the most urgent thing? Please, please, please reach out to us. My job is to prioritize the most urgent things to the top of the pile. I try to do a good job at that, but one pair of eyes is nothing like as good as the community.
Yeah.
So, that would be, rather than me sort of broadcasting, we're going to do this next, I'd much prefer to just say the ears are open. So, please, 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 if anyone thinks, oh, this is a particular pain point, or this really bugs me, can be very big, can be very small, please let me know.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, with that, how can our listeners learn more about Translucent? How can they how can they start using the platform, and where should they get in contact with you?
Sure. So anyone can just sign up for Translucent. It's at translucent.app is the website. And the sign up process is you just, you add your Xero files and it begins to sync the data. Depending on the size of those files, that can take seconds or a few hours. Just, as I say, depending on how many transactions and how big the group is. And then you start then it's all the apps and tools and workflows are available to use. So it's very easy to sign up. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm easily found on LinkedIn. The only problem is I do have an incredibly common name. There are many, many Michael Woods in the world. At one stage, it doesn't happen anymore. It makes me quite sad. But about 10, 20 years ago, whoever owned the michaelwood.com domain set it up as a community site where Michael Woods could meet and greet. So that's just how common the name is. But if you search for me on LinkedIn with Michael Wood, I probably show up as Michael Wood Receipt Bank or Michael Wood Translucent.
You're in a panda outfit. That's probably the highlight. You're in a panda outfit.
The skunk outfit. Yes, exactly.
The skunk outfit. Yeah. Sorry, the black and white. I'm getting confused. I'm getting confused by my black and white animals.
Easily done.
Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today and sharing everything with our listeners. We look forward to catching up with you again in 3 months' time. But really
next launch event's in late Feb. So looking forward to it. As ever, Heather, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Cheers. Keep up to date with the modern accounting technology landscape by subscribing to the Accounting Apps podcast, the Accounting Apps newsletter, and joining the conversations happening in the Accounting Apps Mastermind community. I'm your host, Heather Smith, and I'm pretty easy to find on all social media. I look forward to connecting with you.